Hello, this is Brother Kevin. Welcome to God Send Ministries International. I'm usually under the Reformation and Revival banner, but today we have a special series that we've been sharing, and that's my journey with the precious people that God gave me. Well, after I met Mickey Mingo, and by the way, I have some of my old pastor's messages on my site, so please look him up. Um, this really, after Mickey, really began my ministry years. Now, I had ministered prior as a prayer warrior, and I even taught in Sunday school uh, and teen ministry, but it was on and off. But the difference now I'm pursuing the call of God without really anybody encouraging me anything. Mickey's ministry set a fire in me, and so I began to start preaching the gospel. Now, up until then, all of my experience had just been in, church, and that's where it's supposed to be. But from now on, I began to start street preaching. I'd preach in Fairfax. I'd preach in Vienna. I'd preach in Annandale. I preached in Northern Virginia. I preached wherever God would have me to preach. And I also got into some trouble too, because the thing that I did not understand is that being gifted by God doesn't make you special. It just means that God just gives you the anointing to be able to perform a job. So I began, because of my pride and arrogance, to sometimes make mistakes in relationships, which is something I still have to watch today. Nevertheless, I got into like a Bible study group. It wasn't a church, where I met this wild man, another wild man, wilder than Mickey. And this man was named Michael Howard. He was a missionary from South Africa. Now, some of you have heard very bad things about Michael, and I'm not trying to defend that. I just want you to know the role that this man played. This man, to me, was the most recklessly abandoned person I had met in my life. And it's like taking what God gave Mickey and now taking it to another level. Okay, you understand praise and worship. You understand how to bring an offering. But now I'm going to show you now, give yourself totally to God in his work. Be totally Jesus' tool. And Michael was the most dancingest, worshiping man I have ever seen. Everything that Michael Howard did was over the top. He was over the top with his preaching. He preached to the top of his voice with 5 people. He preached to the top of his voice if there was 100 people. He danced and jumped and twirled in the air. And he also was a prayer warrior. And I tell you, Michael Howard was so significant and an inspiration. He helped set a fire in me, which moved me to to a preaching, a part of my ministry, which is so important. Me, along with some other wonderful sisters that I had met at that time, we started the DC ministry, where I would preach, and then they would do the streets and do the personal testimony. We worked as a team. And I would preach the gospel every Saturday, and they would be out there working with me. It was one of the happiest moments in my life. I finally said to myself, I have arrived, because now I'm doing what God has called me to do. But it was inspired by this man that would give himself. This man had been in the fields of Mozambique, war-torn Mozambique, or he was shot at. And the miracles I could tell you of Michael Howard, the miracles. If I told you some of the stories, you would say, that's phony, that can't happen. And I'm not going to get into that. But this was the man that I would call a firebrand for the gospel, a firebrand for Jesus. And the reason why this is important is because people play a role in how you're developed. And even though we don't look to people, God uses them many times to bring fire, to bring inspiration and direction. And I thank God for that. And though my preaching ministry was shortly in and abruptly in just a year there in DC at Gallery Place, Chinatown, it still launched me into everything I'm doing today. So this began my ministry years, and I began to wander a little bit, but then God now is doing something brand new. For the first time in my life, I have a prayer colleague.